Natalie Harper stood on the balcony of her hotel room, letting the salty breeze from the Pacific Ocean wash over her face. The coastal town of Cannon Beach, Oregon, stretched before her like a watercolor painting, with its famous rock formations rising majestically from the sand. She had chosen this place deliberately, somewhere far from her life in Portland, far from the memories of Derek and the suffocating relationship she had finally escaped. For 3 years, she had molded herself into what Derek wanted. He had criticized her passion for cooking, calling it impractical. He had dismissed her dreams of working in fine dining, insisting she should settle for something more stable and predictable. Every decision, from what she ate to what she wore, had been subject to his judgment. But 2 weeks ago, Natalie had finally found the courage to walk away. Now, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of coral and gold, she felt something she had not experienced in years: hope. Tomorrow she would drive to Seattle to start her new position as restaurant operations manager at a prestigious hospitality company. Tonight, she would simply exist, free and unbound. The stranger with kind eyes, the Tides restaurant sat perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering diners an unobstructed view of nature's evening show. Natalie had requested a table for one, determined to practice the art of enjoying her own company. She wore a simple emerald dress that matched her eyes, and for the first time in years, she had chosen it because she liked it, not because someone else approved. She was studying the menu, trying to decide between the seared scallops and the wild salmon, when a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, but I noticed you're sitting alone, and so am I. Would you mind if I joined you? The sunset from this angle is spectacular, and it seems a shame to watch it without good company." Natalie looked up to find a man standing beside her table. He was tall, with dark hair that fell slightly across his forehead, and blue eyes that held genuine warmth. He wore a casual navy sweater and jeans, and there was something about his relaxed posture that put her at ease. "That's quite a bold approach," she said, unable to suppress a smile. "Too bold?" he asked, his expression turning slightly uncertain. "I can go back to my table if you prefer. I just thought I'd take a chance." Something about his honesty made her decision easy. "No, please sit. I could use the company." He settled into the chair across from her with a grateful smile. "Owen," he said, extending his hand. "Natalie," she replied, shaking it. His grip was firm but gentle, and she noticed calluses on his palms that suggested he worked with his hands despite his polished appearance. Conversations that touched the soul. They ordered wine and appetizers, and what began as casual conversation quickly deepened into something more meaningful. Owen spoke about his love for travel and food, describing meals he had enjoyed in small villages across Europe and Asia. His eyes lit up when he talked about the stories behind each dish, the traditions and cultures woven into every recipe. "Food is never just about sustenance," he said, breaking a piece of crusty bread. "It's about connection, memory, and love. Every great meal tells a story." Natalie felt her heart skip. "That's exactly how I feel. I've always believed that cooking is one of the most intimate things you can do for someone. You're nourishing them, comforting them, showing them you care." "You speak like someone who understands hospitality deeply," Owen observed, leaning forward with interest. "What do you do, Natalie?" She told him about her background in restaurant management, her culinary training, and her new job in Seattle. As she spoke, she realized how long it had been since someone had truly listened to her dreams without judgment or criticism. "Eric, my ex never understood it," she found herself admitting. "He thought passion was impractical. He wanted me to be smaller, quieter, more controlled." Owen's expression darkened slightly. "Anyone who tries to dim your light isn't worthy of holding it in the first place." The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, made Natalie's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you for saying that." Under the stars, ours passed like minutes. They shared the seared scallops and the wild salmon, trading bites and opinions. They laughed over stories from their past, discovered shared loves of old movies and jazz music, and found themselves finishing each other's thoughts with surprising frequency. When the restaurant began to close, Owen suggested a walk on the beach. The moon had risen full and bright, casting a silver path across the water. They removed their shoes and walked along the edge of the waves, the cold water shocking and exhilarating against their feet. "Can I tell you something?" Owen said, stopping to face her. The moonlight illuminated his features, and Natalie could see vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't usually do this. Approach strangers, share so much of myself. But from the moment I saw you sitting there, something told me I needed to know you." "I felt it too," Natalie whispered. "Like the universe was pushing us together." He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I know we just met, and this might sound crazy, but I feel like I've been looking for you without knowing it." Natalie's breath caught. "Owen, may I kiss you?" he asked softly. Instead of answering, she closed the distance between them. When their lips met, it felt like coming home. The kiss was tender at first, then deepened with an urgency that spoke of recognition and longing. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. They walked for another hour, hands intertwined, sharing dreams and fears under the starlight. Owen told her about his vision for creating spaces where people could feel truly cared for, where service came from genuine compassion rather than obligation. Natalie shared her dream of one day opening a restaurant that felt like a warm embrace, where every guest left feeling love. Goodbye at Donna's. The sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. They found themselves back at the hotel. At the door to her room, reality began to intrude on their magical bubble. "When do you leave for Seattle?" Owen asked, still holding her hand. "Tomorrow afternoon," Natalie said, feeling a pang of sadness. I travel frequently for work," he said vaguely. "But Natalie, tonight was extraordinary. You're extraordinary." She smiled, memorizing every detail of his face. "It was perfect. Thank you for approaching me, for taking that chance." He kissed her once more, soft and lingering. "Maybe our paths will cross again." "Seattle isn't that big." Maybe she agreed, though part of her knew that magical nights like this were rare, fleeting things that existed outside normal life. When her door closed, Natalie leaned against it, her heart full and aching at the same time. She had no last name, no phone number, no way to find him again. But she had the memory of this night, proof that she was capable of connecting deeply with someone, that her heart could still feel joy and wonder. Owen stood in the hallway for a long moment before walking away, his mind already replaying every moment of their evening. He had not been entirely honest with her about who he was, but the connection had been so genuine, so pure, that he had not wanted to ruin it with the weight of his position and wealth. For one night, he had just been Owen, a man enchanted by a remarkable woman. Neither of them could have guessed that in just days, fate would bring them together again in the most complicated way possible. Some connections were too powerful to be denied, even when every rule and circumstance stood in their way. The Seattle skyline emerged through the morning mist like a promise of new possibilities. Natalie gripped the steering wheel of her car, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had left Cannon Beach behind, along with the memory of that magical night with Owen. She had spent the drive trying to convince herself that what they shared had been real, even if it could never be more than a beautiful moment frozen in time. Her new apartment in the capital Hill neighborhood was small but charming, with exposed brick walls and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. She had spent her first evening in Seattle, unpacking boxes and trying to calm her racing thoughts about her first day at Sterling Hospitality Group. This job was everything she had worked toward. A chance to help shape the dining experience at some of the finest hotels and restaurants in the Pacific Northwest. That night, she pulled out the cocktail napkin Owen had doodled on during their dinner. He had drawn 2 seashells on the sand, their edges touching. She had tucked it carefully into her wallet, a tangible reminder that the evening had been real. Now, looking at it under the lamplight of her new home, she whispered a quiet wish to the universe that somehow, someday, their paths might cross again. First day nerves Monday morning arrived with typical Seattle rain, a gentle drizzle that made the city look like it was wrapped in silver gauze. Natalie chose a tailored charcoal suit that made her feel professional and confident. She arrived at the Sterling Hospitality Group headquarters 30 minutes early, giving herself time to compose her thoughts in the sleek marble lobby. The building was stunning, All glass and polished steel, with living walls of greenery that brought nature into the urban space. A beautiful fountain in the center created a soothing sound, and Natalie could immediately sense the attention to detail that went into every aspect of the design. This was a company that understood the importance of creating experiences, not just providing services. Natalie Harper, a woman in her early 40s, approached with a warm smile, extending her hand. I'm Rachel Bennett, Director of Human Resources. Welcome to Sterling Hospitality. Thank you so much, Natalie replied, shaking her hand. I'm thrilled to be here. Rachel guided her through security and up to the 25th floor, chatting easily about the company culture and what Natalie could expect from her first week. The offices were open and bright, with employees who seemed genuinely happy to be at work. Everywhere Natalie looked, she saw evidence of a company that valued its people. Meeting the team, the morning passed in a whirlwind of introductions and orientations. Natalie met her team of 5 talented professionals who managed restaurant operations across Sterling's hotel properties. Lily Chen, a cheerful woman with short black hair and an infectious laugh, immediately took Natalie under her wing. You're going to love it here, Lily said during their coffee break. The work is challenging, but Owen, our CEO, he really cares about creating something meaningful. He's not like other executives who just care about profit margins. Owen, Natalie's heart stuttered. It was a common name, she told herself. Plenty of people were named Owen. Owen Sterling, Lily continued, stirring cream into her coffee. He founded this company 8 years ago after a pretty rough experience at his previous job. He's incredibly hands-on, which means you'll probably meet him today. He likes to personally welcome all new department heads. Natalie felt the blood drained from her face. It could not be the same Owen. The universe would not be that cruel or that kind. Depending on how she looked at it, the revelation at 4 o'clock, Rachel appeared at Natalie's desk with that same warm smile. Ready to meet the boss? Natalie's hands trembled slightly as she gathered her portfolio and followed Rachel to the elevator. They rode up to the 30th floor in silence, and with each passing second, Natalie's heart beat faster. She tried to prepare herself for disappointment. It would be a different Owen, an older man perhaps, or someone who looked nothing like the man who had kissed her under the stars. The executive suite was elegant but understated. With the same attention to natural elements that characterized the rest of the building, Rachel led her past a receptionist and knocked gently on a dark wooden door. Come in, came the response from inside. Rachel opened the door. Owen, I'd like you to meet Natalie Harper, our new restaurant operations manager. Natalie stepped into the office, and time seemed to stop. Behind an expansive desk made of reclaimed wood sat Owen, her Owen, the man who had made her laugh over dinner, who had kissed her on the beach, who had looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the world. His dark hair was styled more formally now, and he wore a crisp white shirt and navy tie. But those blue eyes were unmistakable. For a moment that felt like an eternity, they simply stared at each other. Natalie watched the shock register on his face, followed by recognition. And then something that looked like panic mixed with longing. Professional masks, Mr. Sterling, Natalie managed to say, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. It's a pleasure to meet you. She saw him swallow hard before standing and extending his hand. Ms. Harper, welcome to Sterling Hospitality. When their hands touched, the connection was immediate and electric, just as it had been on the beach. Natalie had to fight to keep her expression neutral. She could see the same struggle playing out in his eyes. Rachel, oblivious to the tension crackling in the room, beamed with pride. Natalie comes to us with excellent credentials and some innovative ideas for enhancing our dining experiences. I think you two will work wonderfully together. I'm sure we will, Owen said, his voice carefully controlled. He gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. Please, have a seat. As Natalie sat down, her mind raced with 1,000 questions. How had she not known? Sterling Hospitality Group. Owen Sterling. The connection seemed obvious now, but that night on the beach, they had been so focused on each other on the moment that surnames and job titles had seemed irrelevant. Shh, Rachel, Owen said, his eyes never leaving Natalie's face. Would you mind giving us a few minutes? I'd like to discuss some specific operational goals with Ms. Harper, of course, Rachel said, standing. Natalie, if you need anything at all, my office is on the 25th floor. The moment the door closed behind Rachel, the air in the room became thick with unspoken words. The painful truth, Natalie, Owen said softly, running his hand through his hair in that familiar gesture. I had no idea. Neither did I, she replied, gripping the arms of her chair to steady herself. Sterling. I should have made the connection, but I was so focused on starting fresh, on leaving my past behind. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her, shoulders tense. When I saw you that night, I knew you were starting a new job in Seattle, but I never imagined it would be here. With my company? What do we do now? Natalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Owen turned to face her, and she could see the conflict written clearly across his features. This is complicated, Natalie. More complicated than you know, then help me understand. He returned to his desk, but did not sit. Instead, he leaned against it, arms crossed. This company has a strict policy regarding workplace relationships. Any romantic involvement between employees, regardless of their positions, results in immediate termination for both parties. Natalie felt her stomach drop. Both parties? No exceptions, Owen confirmed. I created this policy myself 5 years ago, and I've never wavered from it. Why? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Policies that strict usually came from painful experience. Owen was quiet for a long moment, clearly debating how much to share. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with old pain. Before I founded Sterling Hospitality, I worked for a company called Westbridge Hotels. I was the vice president of operations, being groomed for the CEO position. I was also in a relationship with another executive, Vanessa Westbridge, the founder's daughter. Natalie listened, her heart aching for the man in front of her. We thought we were careful, Owen continued. We kept it secret for almost 2 years. But when the relationship ended badly, everything fell apart. Vanessa claimed I had used her for access to confidential information. I said she had manipulated the situation to damage my career out of spite. The company divided into factions. Clients left, and within a year, Westbridge Hotels collapsed. Owen, Natalie whispered. I lost everything, he said, his blue eyes meeting hers. My career, my reputation, my savings, fighting lawsuits. It took me 5 years to rebuild. When I started Sterling Hospitality, I vowed never to let personal relationships jeopardize what I was building. This company is built on trust, transparency, and merit. Nothing can compromise that. An impossible choice Natalie stood, needing to move to think. So what you're saying is that night on the beach, what we felt, none of it matters. I'm saying it matters too much, Owen said, his voice rough with emotion. That's exactly why it's so dangerous. Natalie, you're talented and brilliant, and you deserve this opportunity. But if we pursue what started that night, we both lose everything. And if we ignore it, she asked. If we pretend we don't feel this connection every time we're in the same room, he closed his eyes briefly, then we do our jobs. We maintain professional boundaries. We let that night remain a beautiful memory. Natalie felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. That's not fair. Life rarely is, Owen said gently. But I won't destroy your career, Natalie. You've worked too hard to get here. And I won't watch everything I've built collapse again because I couldn't control my feelings. The word feelings hung in the air between them, an admission neither had been willing to make until now. So we're just supposed to work together every day? Natalie said, pretending we're strangers. We're supposed to be professionals, Owen corrected. And yes, it will be difficult. But the alternative is losing everything. Natalie walked to the door, her hand on the handle. She turned back to look at him one last time. That night meant something to me, Owen. You made me feel seen and valued in a way I never had before. I don't know if I can just forget that. I don't want you to forget, he said quietly. I just need you to understand why we can't act on it. She nodded, though her heart was breaking. I understand. Good evening, Mr. Sterling. Good evening, Miss Harper, as Natalie left his office and made her way to the elevator. She felt the weight of their impossible situation settling over her like a heavy cloak. She had found something precious and rare with Owen, only to discover that keeping it would cost them both everything they had worked for in his office. Owen remained standing by the window long after she left, watching the rain streak down the glass. He had meant every word he said about protecting the company, about maintaining boundaries. But as he stood there alone, he could still feel the ghost of her hand in his, still taste the sweetness of their kiss under the stars. Some connections were too powerful to be denied, but some costs were too high to be paid. The question was, which truth would ultimately win? 3 months had passed since Natalie learned the truth about Owen Sterling, and every day felt like walking a tightrope between professionalism and the pull of something deeper. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove she deserved her position on merit alone. Her ideas for revamping the dining experiences across Sterling's hotel properties had earned praise from everyone, and her team respected her dedication and vision, but it was the inevitable meetings with Owen that tested her resolve. They happened twice a week, sometimes more when special projects demanded attention. Each time, she prepared herself mentally, building walls around her heart. Each time, those walls crumbled a little more when he looked at her. With those blue eyes that held both longing and restraint, Owen maintained perfect professional distance in public. He called her Ms. Harper in meetings, discussed only business matters, and never let his gaze linger too long. But Natalie noticed the small things. The way his jaw tightened when other men spoke to her with too much familiarity, the slight pause before he responded to her ideas, as if he needed a moment to switch from personal to professional thoughts. The coffee that appeared on her desk during long afternoons, prepared exactly how she liked it. With no note or explanation, the Vancouver project, everything changed when Sterling's hospitality secured the contract for a luxury resort in Vancouver. It was the company's most ambitious project yet. A waterfront property that would set new standards for West Coast hospitality. Owen assigned Natalie to lead the restaurant and dining strategy, working directly with him to ensure every detail aligned with his vision. "This project is crucial," Owen said during their first planning meeting. Present were Natalie, Owen, and 2 other department heads. "We're not just building a hotel. We're creating an experience that will redefine luxury dining in the Pacific Northwest." Natalie presented her initial concepts, her passion evident in every word. "I propose we create 3 distinct dining venues. The main restaurant will focus on farm-to-table cuisine with ingredients sourced from local Vancouver Island producers. The rooftop bar will offer small plates paired with craft cocktails that tell stories of British Columbia's history. And the private dining room will be intimate, exclusive, designed for celebrations that deserve to be remembered." Owen leaned forward, his eyes bright with interest. "The storytelling aspect through food and drink, that's exactly the emotional connection we need. Can you develop this further?" "Already working on it," Natalie replied, and for a moment their eyes met across the table. The air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken recognition. The other department heads exchanged glances, but said nothing. Late nights and honest conversations as the Vancouver project intensified. Natalie found herself working late into the evenings. The office would empty around 6, leaving only the dedicated few who believed in what they were building. Owen was always among them, his office light visible from her desk 3 floors below. One Thursday evening, around 9, Natalie was reviewing supplier contracts when her phone rang. It was Owen's extension. "It's Harper. Could you come up to my office? I have some questions about the beverage program." When she entered his office, she found him surrounded by design mock-ups and budget spreadsheets. His tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, but energized, the way people look when they're working on something they truly love. "You wanted to discuss the beverage program?" Natalie asked, maintaining professional distance. "Yes and no," Owen admitted, gesturing for her to sit. "I wanted your honest opinion on something, and I knew you'd still be here. What is it?" He showed her 2 different design concepts for the main restaurant. Both were beautiful, but one felt safe and traditional, while the other took risks, with bold colors and unexpected elements. "Which one speaks to you?" he asked. Natalie studied them carefully. "This one," she said, pointing to the riskier design. because it's honest. It doesn't apologize for being different. It trusts that people will appreciate authenticity over familiarity. Owen smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. That's what I thought too. Everyone else is pushing for the safe choice, but safe doesn't create memories. Oh, Natalie agreed softly. It doesn't. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who understand each other deeply. Finally, Owen spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? You don't have to answer if it makes you uncomfortable. Natalie's heart beat faster. Go ahead. That night in Cannon Beach, you mentioned your ex, Derek. You said he wanted you to be smaller, quieter. What did you mean? She was quiet for a moment, surprised by the question and by her desire to answer honestly. Derek believed that passion was weakness. He thought everything should be controlled, measured, optimized. When I talked about food or restaurants, he would tell me I was being too emotional, too impractical. He made me feel like my dreams were childish. He was wrong, Owen said firmly. Passion is what makes us human. It's what separates good work from great work. Your passion for hospitality is one of your greatest strengths.
Ellie.
Felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you for saying that. I mean it, he said, his voice gentle. That night on the beach, watching you talk about creating spaces where people feel loved through food, I saw someone who understood what I've been trying to build here. Someone who gets that business should have heart, Owen. She whispered, forgetting to call him Mr. Sterling. He stood abruptly, walking to the window as if needing distance. I think about that night constantly, Natalie. Every day I tell myself I made the right choice, that protecting our careers is more important than exploring what we felt. But then I see you in meetings, passionate and brilliant, and I wonder if I'm protecting us or just hiding behind fear. The breaking point, the words hung in the air between them, dangerous and honest. Natalie stood, her heart pounding. Are you saying you regret the choice we made? Owen turned to face her. I'm saying I don't know anymore. The policy I created was meant to protect the company, to prevent the kind of disaster that destroyed my previous career. But what if I'm so afraid of repeating the past that I'm missing the present? Natalie took a step closer. What changed? You did, he said simply. These 3 months of working with you, seeing your integrity, your dedication, the way you inspire your team. You've shown me that not every relationship is like what I experienced with Vanessa. Some connections are built on genuine respect and shared values. Owen, we can't do this, Natalie said, even as her heart screamed the opposite. You said it yourself. The cost is too high. I know, he replied, his voice rough. But I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of treating you like just another employee when you're so much more. What are you suggesting? She asked, barely breathing. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. I'm suggesting that maybe the policy needs to change. That maybe I've been so focused on avoiding one kind of loss that I've been guaranteeing another. But your company, everything you've built means nothing if I'm too afraid to live honestly, Owen interrupted. I've built Sterling Hospitality on the principle that people deserve authentic experiences. How can I ask my employees to bring their whole selves to work if I'm not willing to do the same? Natalie's mind raced. What about the risks? The potential for conflicts of interest, the questions about favoritism? We face them head on, Owen said. With transparency, with clear boundaries, with the same integrity we bring to everything else. Other companies manage it. Why can't we? A decision that changes everything. Natalie looked into his eyes and saw not just longing, but determination. This was not a reckless decision made in a moment of weakness. This was a man who had spent 3 months weighing consequences and had decided some things were worth the risk. Are you sure? She whispered. Because if we do this, there's no going back. People will talk. Some will question your judgment. It could affect everything. Let him talk, Owen said, taking her hands in his. I'm tired of living in fear of what might go wrong. That night on the beach, I felt more alive than I had in years. I'm not willing to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. I felt it too. Every single day since then. And let's stop fighting this, he said gently, wiping away her tears with his thumb. Let's be brave enough to choose each other. Won't be easy, Natalie warned. Nothing worth having ever is, Owen replied. This time, when he kissed her, it was not stolen or forbidden. It was a promise. A commitment to face whatever came next together with honesty and courage. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling despite the tears. So what happens now? Natalie asked. Owen said we do this the right way. Tomorrow, I'm calling an emergency board meeting to discuss revising the relationship policy. We'll create guidelines that protect the company while acknowledging that we're all human beings with hearts. And then, if you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. A proper date, where we don't have to hide or pretend. I'd like that very much, Natalie said. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, knowing that challenges lay ahead, but facing them together felt like the only honest choice. 6 months later, Sterling Hospitality implemented a new relationship disclosure policy that allowed workplace relationships with proper transparency and oversight. The Vancouver resort opened to rave reviews, with Natalie's restaurant concepts earning national recognition. And on a quiet Sunday morning, Owen and Natalie returned to Cannon Beach, walking the same stretch of sand where they had first kissed. Do you regret it? Natalie asked, watching the waves. The risk you took. Owen pulled her close. Not for a single moment. You taught me that the biggest risk isn't following your heart. It's living in fear of your own happiness. As the sun rose over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they stood together. Proof that sometimes the best love stories are the ones brave enough to rewrite the rules.